amazing Australians and the story of their lives. You're tuned to Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald.
Hello and welcome, listeners. My guest today is Noel Whittaker, who, due to popular demand, has kindly agreed to come back and chat to us. Noel is one of Australia's most successful authors, with worldwide sales of more than 2 million copies of his books. His first book, Making Money Made Simple, set sales record across the country and was named in the 100 most influential books of the 20th century. Many of his books are on audio. Noel is one of the world's foremost authorities on personal finance. In 2003, he was awarded the Australian Centenary Medal in recognition of his financial services and was made an Order of Australia for service to the community in raising awareness of personal finance. He has his own newspaper column, syndicated throughout Australia, and his own radio show throughout Australia as well. So I'm sure there are many of you not many of you, I should say, who haven't heard of him. Good morning and welcome, Noel.
Thanks, and nice to be back again.
Lovely to have you. So tell me now, you've got a new book out, which I've read, called Wills, Death and Taxes Made Simple. It's a really wonderful, informative book, and one I think most people, or everybody, should get their hands on. But shall we just start at the very beginning? The wills. So you say it's the cornerstone of estate planning. So if you haven't already got a will, how do you go about making one and updating it? And how important is it to have one?
Less than 50% of people get around to making a will, and when they do, they never update the will.
Right.
And the average age of making a will is about 47. If you think about that, well, if you're 47, your oldies might be 80, and you're now thinking about the estate the oldies might leave you, and estate planning suddenly comes into your mindset, I think. I'd like to point out from the start that estate planning is 4 different topics. You've got law and superannuation and tax and all the stuff like aged care and stuff. So it's 4 very different, very important topics.
As I say, can you write your will sort of on a little piece of paper and leave it under a paperweight at home when you think you're going to die? Or have you got to go to a lawyer to set it all up? And how complicated is it?
There have been cases where people have done their will on a mobile phone or something. Look, you're better off to go to a lawyer and get it right, because you're getting it wrong and you're going to be challenged. You could be years fighting in courts and could cost you a fortune. So it's much cheaper to get it done from the start and save all that turmoil and trouble and cost later.
Exactly. And what exactly, does make a will valid? What have you actually got to make sure you've got in there?
Well, it should be in writing and witnessed by 2 people who aren't the beneficiaries. And preferably we say they should use the same pen as the will maker, as evidence they were there at the same time. Because if the will maker writes in a blue biro and the witnesses write in a black biro and the will's challenged, you could say, well, they weren't there. It just takes out another opportunity for people to challenge. And they will.
Yes, I mean, probably, particularly nowadays, there is a lot of challenges that happens with wills, aren't there?
Well, what lawyers are doing now, thanks to social media, there's a massive rise in no win, no fee.
Right.
Have a go, won't cost you anything.
Yes.
And that's a big thing. Plus, what we're seeing now is that people living longer, they tend to repartner when their partner passes on. And the new partners tend to have their own kids and assets. So now you're dealing with the new partner and the kids from you and the other partner and the new partner's children and the new partner's assets. And it's not just the kids, it's the kids' partners.
In many cases now, because I read the other day that the statistics on older people getting divorced is quite high now at the moment. So then you're looking at grandchildren being involved as well.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure. So it's becoming a minefield.
Right.
And also there's little traps like, say that you and I are a wealthy couple and we've just formed a new relationship, and you go to a nursing home and I pay $500,000 for your bond and you die, that's part of your estate. It can't come back to me. So that's $500,000 left to my estate unless I do what we say in the book, is I don't give you the money, I make a loan to you of the $500,000.
All right.
These are the kind of little tricks you've got to be aware of.
Because, as you say, there are lawyers out there that are ready to pounce.
Sure, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Which brings me now to my next question is powers of attorney, sort of, and in particular an enduring power of attorney. Can you explain that more to us?
Okay, there is a time, usually, when you can't act for yourself.
Yes.
Like you may be overseas, you may have broken your wrist, or you may have dementia. And that's when you need someone else to act for you. Now, the trouble with the enduring power of attorney is there because you normally need it when the person has not any capacity. And the old ones finished up when the donor lost capacity. The enduring ones last forever. But a lot of people think, especially couples, that the power of attorney lasts after the death of the other person, and it doesn't. If you've got your husband's power of attorney,
yes,
it dies when he dies. So
yes.
Many people go along to the bank, look at this, I've got the power of attorney. Sorry, it's not there anymore. But also, I think you need to rehearse it. Now, I talk about in the book about the case of a couple who had the mum's power of attorney, and mum went to a nursing home. They went to the bank to get $500,000 out for the bond, and the bank said, can't do it. The attorney document is invalid because the kids signed before mum. Now, the document is where mum gives them power. If you're being given power, you can't accept it before you're given it.
Right.
Now, legal advice said that's easy. We'll get the attorneys to re-sign.
Yes.
Banks said we won't accept that. So banks are becoming more and more intransigent.
Right.
Yes.
And it's very important. I mean, I've just been through this a couple of years ago, sadly, when my sister died.
Yeah.
And my brother and I were powers of attorney. It must be the original power of attorney, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Yes.
You can't waft up to the bank or go up to the bank with a copy and hope that that's good enough. It's actually got to be proved that it is the original copy of the power of attorney.
Unless it was a certified copy.
Right.
Signed off by a lawyer or somebody, or a notary public.
Right. Right, yes.
But see, I was playing golf this morning, and one of my mates was saying, he said, my mother's just died. I've been sorting out of things. There's a $500,000 bond to come back, but now they've just told me they can't count it back till they get probate.
Right.
Now, he didn't know that because probate's the proof of the will.
Yes.
No one will act without probate, but that could take 8 weeks, 12 weeks.
Or even longer.
Even longer. And he's saying, okay, that means that they've got the use of my money, I haven't got it.
Right.
Yeah.
And in your book, actually, you quote another case of where overseas probate. Somebody died in England and had left, of course, the money, not of course, but had left money to their children who were in Australia. And they hired an Australian lawyer to try and sort out the estate in England. Now, that took years, didn't it?
Well, they hired the cheapest lawyer they could find. He knew nothing about it, never did one. He didn't realise he'd need to get probate in Great Britain as well. At last count, the fees were $65,000 and the transfer still hadn't happened, and the estate was paying interest to the grandkids because they hadn't got the money yet.
So what should they have done?
They should have got a lawyer who specialises in overseas assets.
So they could still have got a lawyer in Australia, or should they have got one in England?
Well, you need the kind of law firm that's got English connections. That's the point. But overseas assets, we talk about overseas assets and beneficiaries living overseas. You must, if there's an overseas asset involved, you must get tax advice first. It's sometimes better to sell the property in the overseas country and remit the proceeds in cash. Sometimes better to transfer the property over here. It depends on the country and the circumstances.
And every country's different.
Yes. And everyone I know has got kids living overseas, including me. You would only ever leave them cash. If you start leaving them shares and property, you're creating a tax jungle.
Oh, right.
Don't
right.
do it.
That's certainly well worth knowing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Now, what is the difference between a superannuation member benefit and a superannuation death benefit?
This is very, very, very important, Rosemary. The member benefit is what's paid to the member of the fund when they're leaving their job.
You're talking about superannuation funds, aren't we?
Superannuation, yeah. So, I'm working for XYZ. I retire. They pay me a member benefit payment. That's my superannuation,
Yes.
and it's tax-free. A death benefit is paid on the death of the member, and there could be a death tax on that of 17%, because that part of your superannuation left to a non-dependent. Now, your partner's always dependent in this situation. Mm-hmm. The taxable portion has a death tax of 17%. Now, the best way out of it is to make sure your attorney's got instructions to withdraw all your superannuation when your death is getting close.
You don't always know that, of course.
No, but you've got an idea.
Yes.
But also it can take 4 or 5 months to happen. If you've got your money with one of those big funds, you won't get it overnight. So I think, for most people, the senior person, they have an idea when they're going to die. Take it out sooner rather than later, or cop the death tax.
That's very important.
Everything's important in this.
Yeah,
Getting anything wrong costs big dollars in the estate planning area.
No longer can you just sort of think, oh gosh, well, once I'm gone, the kids can sort it out, or my wife can sort it out, or whatever. We really do have to do as much as we possibly can before we go to the higher place or lower.
Sure.
Hopefully the higher place.
Higher place. But also, all kids aren't equal.
No.
Some kids are great and some kids aren't. And some kids are great, but their partners aren't great. So this is all the other things start to come into play.
How long does somebody need to live with somebody else before they are regarded as a legal partner, so that they have claims on your estate?
That's a tricky one. Don't forget that the laws vary from state to state. So it's a matter of fact, basically. And that's why it's good to have a prenup.
Yes.
If you have a new relationship, it's good to have a prenup to at least help you a bit.
Oh, okay.
Because I've seen prenups beaten.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Again, if you've got a good lawyer that's there to fight for you, or against you, it can make it very, very difficult.
Well, I talk about a couple in the book, and they were friends of ours, and she got divorced, and his wife died, and they partnered, and I've seen the prenup, which was very well done. They always said, we'll leave our assets, go to our own side, and she had more assets than him. And I've seen the prenup. And we were with them in the last days, and they were still saying that. She got cancer. He was a very good carer. It was always at a bedside, and she died. 6 months to the date, the estate got a claim from him for $1 million because he was caring for her, irrespective of the prenup. And the lawyer said, wait, mate, he said, you got to give him something. Got to give him something. And they settled for $670,000 in the end.
Gosh.
Because I was very involved with her kids, because
Yes.
I was like a father to them. Yeah.
I mean, it is a real tricky one. We've got 5 grandchildren, and we have sort of made provisions for them, before we've died.
Yeah.
But it's always a worry that what happens when their relationships break up. There's that, as you say, that huge fight over the assets, no matter what age you are.
And they do. Also on the power of attorney thing, I think it's very important, if you're asked to be the attorney, think carefully, because you're standing in place of the deceased. Now, if the deceased has complex assets like property and shares, you then have to come in and run these things.
Right.
So you'll be the one who's decide whether you lease the shop or not.
Yes.
You'll decide whether you sell it or not.
Yes.
And if there's 4 kids arguing about who some want to sell and some don't, you've got to make the decision. And they can sue you for this. So I'd be very, very, very careful about ever becoming an executor for somebody. An attorney for someone.
So you're listening to Lots to Chat About. I'm Rosemary Peterswald, and my guest today is world-renowned financial guru Noel Whittaker.
You were too kind, Rosemary.
Oh, well, it's having read your book, I think it's well and truly deserved. Now, this, again, is something that I was involved in recently, is becoming executor of a will.
Yes.
Should you think very carefully before becoming one? Because, I mean, there it is, and I can guarantee that. There's a huge amount of work involved, isn't
Yes,
there?
there is. And also, do you want one executor or two or three? There can be great difficulty if you have executors in different states. We suggest you have one executor with a backup executor. And you want someone competent. I mean, when I wrote that book, I went out to my 40,000 people who read my newsletter and asked for stories.
Yes.
And I got so many stories. And so many of the executor was hopeless.
Right.
Didn't know what to do, didn't do the paperwork,
Yes.
So I think if I pick someone as an executor, I need to talk to them first and see if they're happy to do it. And secondly, are they able to do it?
And they won't necessarily be recompensed for doing it.
Well, they normally aren't.
No.
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 Now, there are some law firms who'll do it,
Yes.
and I think that could be a good thing to do with certain people. As long as they charge by the hour and not by a proportion of the estate. You need to watch that one as well.
Where does the public trustee come into it? When I was selling real estate in Hobart, a number of properties I sold were actually being handled by the public trustee.
Well, it's a controversial area, this.
Yes.
I don't want to talk about it too much, but some are happy and some aren't. My wife's mother had the public trustee. It went very well, but it was a house, two sisters who got on well,
Yes.
and cash in the bank. It was simple. But I've heard if it's complex, they could be long delays in this, and they take a proportion of the estate. Their fee is a percentage of your assets.
So is it? It's the person who's made the will who appoints, if they haven't got an executor, or if they haven't got a will. Does that mean that the public trustee automatically takes over, or?
Depends on the circumstance in the state, I think.
Right.
If you die intestate, it's a
Yes.
different matter.
Okay.
But see, the public trustee advertises they'll do the wills for free. Of course, that's to get your business.
Exactly. But then they get a percentage later.
Yes.
So what's a testamentary trust?
There are some people who you can't trust to handle money. There's many cases. I think the classic case in the book was the deceased had $4 million and 4 kids. And one kid was a builder in financial strife, and one was a gambler, and one was the daughter in a rocky relationship, and one was a high-earning medical practitioner. If that would have gone to the people, the builder's creditors would have taken it, the gambler would have gambled it, the wife's husband might have got half, and the doctor would have had tax problems. By leaving it the 4 testamentary trusts on behalf of those people run by someone else, the builder's creditors couldn't touch it, the gambler can't get it, the departing husband can't get it, and there are very effective ways tax-wise to invest it. So a testamentary trust is very, very useful in all sorts of circumstances.
Is it difficult to set up?
No. It's just part of the will.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that's certainly worth looking into. Now, investment bonds, or otherwise known as insurance bonds, how do they work?
The great thing about those is they're a tax-paid investment like super. So there's never anything to declare on anyone's tax account. If you left someone a parcel of shares, there'd be tax on the dividends. But the earnings in a bond accrue. It just grows. And you can transfer it free of capital gains tax any time you wish, and it can't be challenged under the will. So if I was a sort of guy who had a rocky relationships, but I've one daughter I want to take care of and don't want that challenged, I could put $100,000 for her in an insurance bond, knowing it wouldn't give her any tax troubles, and it can't be challenged by the will.
And is it your accountant or your lawyer that would set that up for you?
It's a financial advisor.
Right.
See, again, in this space, you've got lawyers,
Yes.
and accountants, and superannuation experts, and financial planners. And no one has the skills of all of these things.
You really do need to
They're
to
four
speak to all.
specialties, yeah.
Yes. Gosh.
Yeah.
How important is an advance health directive? I mean, after my recent illness, my husband and I
Yep.
have certainly done one, but maybe one shouldn't wait to become ill in order to have one.
Well, you never know when you're going to become ill is the problem.
Yes.
And the Advance Health Directive lets the world know what you do and do not want. Now, I've told my family, if you keep me in some room in an aged care place for years, I'll come back and haunt you. When I go, I want to go like a light bulb. I don't want to be kept alive under any circumstances. And my health directive makes that very, very clear.
As does mine, yes.
Yeah, but other people, they're different.
Right.
It depends. It could be cultural, religious. Yeah.
Yes.
But it clearly states what you want. I think that's the thing.
And the other thing is, I mean, if you are left languishing in a nursing home for 10, 15 years or something like that, that's a huge burden on the estate, isn't it?
Absolutely. But what you don't want is the family members arguing about the wishes of mum or dad. So the Advance Health Directive takes out arguments about mum or dad would have wanted, even though I've told my kids 100 times.
So in order to set one up, you talk to your family GP, don't you?
Well, it's got to be signed off by the GP.
Yes.
Who's got to interview you, yeah.
Right.
But basically, you can just buy a form from a newsagent and take it to your doctor.
And the doctor keeps it on file?
No, you keep it.
Right.
And again, this is very, very important. Let people know where your wills and powers of attorney and advance health directives are. Because many people, like there's a classic case where the guy did it all and put it in a safe deposit box in the bank. The kids needed the court order to get them.
Or otherwise they forget where they've put them, or they put them in the will in the safe at home and forget the combination.
And in my wife's case, her mother was 92 and wanted to die. She was living on her own and had a bad fall. It was on a Saturday. The advance health director was with the doctor and they couldn't find it. They couldn't get to it. The surgery was closed and they have to resuscitate. So make sure it's available.
If you're on your own, Noel, and you have drawn one up, but you're rushed off to hospital and, it's at home somewhere and whatever.
I know.
It's very difficult, isn't it?
It is difficult, sure.
Dying is difficult.
Well, I don't know. I've never done it.
None of us have. Now, tell me a little bit more about binding financial agreements.
Well, it's a prenup, basically.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Okay, so
it's an agreement about what happens with your assets.
And very important if you're, as you say, going into a new relationship or whatever, so that people are very clear.
Sure, and get it done early.
I was going to say, you do say in your book, don't leave it until you're walking down the aisle, because then you may not be walking down the aisle.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. I know you're better off to get it. And if they're decent people, they should be happy to do a prenup.
Yes. Well, I think in this day and age, anybody that objects, I don't know, I'd probably think twice about marrying them, I think.
It'd be a big red flag, Rosemary.
Exactly.
A big red flag.
Yeah. So very, very important.
Yes.
And going back to, of course, sadly dying, is how important is it to leave a legacy? Sort of, you quote George Bernard Shaw, and I just think this is lovely. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I have got hold of for a moment, and I want to make burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. That's a wonderful quote, isn't it?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's individual choice, but to me, what else can we leave but a legacy?
Exactly.
And you can do that with all sorts of ways. You can donate, you can leave books. There's heaps of things you can do.
Yes.
One of the great ones is to record something for your family so they can listen to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I have to say that my father wrote a wonderful book just for the family, and my brother Eugene had it published for the family, and it was just called The Way Things Happened.
Sure.
And it is the most wonderful thing, and I've actually written my own memoir. And I like to think that when you leave this world that you're not totally forgotten about, because I was reading some of the other day, which I think is true, how many of us can even name our grandfather's father? because, you know, you can...
That's a tough one.
I know, you can name your grandfather and grandmother and whatever, but go back a further generation and they become sort of invisible people. Whereas, fortunately, in my case, a lot of my family have left a lot of writing
yes,
behind.
That's so good. That's so good, yes.
It is. So, yes, listeners, if you haven't already, constantly on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, I'm getting ads saying this is the way to write your memoir.
Sure.
And there's all sorts of things. But even if you just grab an exercise book, isn't it, and write a few things down.
Sure.
Or if you're there listening to children or grandchildren, get your parents or grandparents to sit down and ask them some questions.
Sure, absolutely.
Which is very important.
Sure.
Now, you have wonderful cartoons in your book. They're terrific, and I believe Paul Leonard does those.
Yes, Paul does them. Yeah.
Do you come up with the ideas, or does he?
Not normally. I normally give him the manuscript, and,
Yes.
he does the ideas. But if they're meant to illustrate a point,
And they do.
I will tell him. Yeah, he's good. We've worked together for many years.
Oh, right. Yes, yeah. Because I've got all your books, I think.
I know.
He's terrific, and they really sort of hit home and hit the punchline, to say.
And there's one point that we haven't covered about age pensioners, because they tend to leave their assets to each other. The single asset cut-off point is much lower than the couple's cut-off point. So if you've got $800,000 of assets, you're under the $1 million cut-off point for a couple. If you leave all your assets to each other, the single cut-off point's around $680,000 or something.
Okay.
The survivor, often the widow, is over the cut-off point, and they lose the pension as well as the partner. So it's important.
A double whammy.
Yes. So the will should be drawn, if appropriate, that you leave enough to other people.
Yes.
That your surviving partner does not get any more than the asset cut-off point, which is the high sixes, yeah.
Well, I've got Noel's book in front of me, listeners. It's called, as I say, Wills, Death and Taxes Made Simple, How to Secure Your Assets, Reduce Legal and Tax Bills, and Maintain Family Harmony After You're Gone. Because there's so many families that fall out, aren't there?
Tell me about it. I hear it all the time.
It's tragic.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So many times you say, "Well, I haven't spoken to my brother since our parents died,
I know that.
or whatever." It's sad, just very sad. But you can prepare for it, can't you? As much as possible.
Well, I think the whole aim of this book is to let you know what's out there, and then you can sort of focus on what you think's important. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, so Noel, I've got the book here, and I know you can go to noelwhittaker.com.au
That's it.
in order to order it. Is that the best way for our listeners to order your book?
I think it's easier, yeah. I think it's easier.
Terrific. So that's Noel, Noel, Whittaker, WHITTKER.com.au.
Yes.
So thank you, Noel, for being my guest once more, and I hope you come back again, probably
It's
with
a
another new
pleasure.
book.
No, this is the last book.
Oh, really?
We could talk about other topics, but this is the last book.
Oh, well, we might talk about golf next time.
Oh, God. Thanks, Rosemary.
Thank you, Noel. Terrific.
Great friends and great chats. That was another Lots to Chat About with Rosemary Peterswald. Stay tuned next week for another amazing chat.